My dear friends, today we celebrate the 17th Sunday in Ordinary Time, Year B. The readings today focus on multiplication, not mathematical, but that of food. In the first reading taken from the second book of Kings, Elisha, who succeeded Elijah, continued to seek Israel's loyalty to their God by showing God's care and power through miracles. In the verses preceding today's reading, Elisha miraculously purifies the pot of stew. Both of these narratives share the same context of scarcity during a famine, with today's reading having a stronger emphasis on the theme of sharing. A man brought 20 loaves of barley and fresh ears of grain to Elisha, who instead of using the offering as food for himself as he would be privileged to do, instructs that they be given to the people to eat, considering the famine. The response of the servant indicates that the amount of the offering was disproportionate to the number of people present at the place. Yet when the food was set before these 100 people, everyone ate, and there were even some leftovers. Surely a miracle takes place, but there is something more important than merely the miracle of the multiplication of food. Everyone got their share of food because people only took what they needed and were not hoarding for the next day. If this were not the case, even if there were to be a miracle, there would not be enough food for all, as people would try to take everything for themselves. Not too long ago, during the COVID-19 pandemic, there were frequent shortages of essential medicines and supplies. A spirit of greed consumed the world, and the hoarding of items contributed to a false shortage of supplies. Fear can sometimes bring in a spirit of individualism that disregards the needs of others and destroys the connections among us. However, during any calamity, natural or man-made, the people who suffer the most are those on the margins of society. Rather than using their power to become rich and powerful, the prophets of Yahweh opted to reach out to the marginalized. In the second reading taken from St. Paul's letter to the Ephesians, Paul outlines the responsibilities associated with being a child of God. It is an appeal to live up to the higher calling for which God has called us. He emphasizes the need to exercise humility, gentleness, patience, and love in all relationships, as it is required to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. Since unity in the church doesn't come easily, we must rely on the Spirit to make it possible to work together harmoniously. He also places special emphasis on the word one. There is one body, one Spirit, one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God. The emphasis is not so much on the diversity of the gifts than the fact that the believers share in the diversity of gifts. We believers have one godly Father whom we worship and who directs our lives. The all in this verse would originally mean Jews and Gentiles, but in our world today, it would include people of all races and cultures. In the Gospel reading taken from John, the narrative of the feeding the 5,000 runs parallel to the first reading. Let's look at some of the similarities between these two narratives, followed by the message they give us. First, we have the offering or gifts that are presented. 20 loaves of barley and fresh ears of grain for Elisha compared to 5 barley loaves and 2 fish for Jesus. Second, we have the presenter of the gifts. We have an unnamed man who brings the first fruits to Elisha and a boy who offers his food to Jesus. Third, we have the skepticism of the disciples. Elisha's servant says, "How can I set this before 100 people?" Whereas Andrew comments about the boy's offering, saying, "But what are they among so many people?" Besides the multiplication of food, which is common, in both cases there was some food left over. There are many ways in which this passage can be interpreted. For example, the multiplication of the loaves is a prefiguring of the Eucharist, and the gathering of the 12 baskets represents food for the 12 tribes of Israel, or a basket each for the 12 disciples. I would, however, like to dwell on one aspect that is very relevant to our day-to-day lives. Of all the similarities that we saw between the two narratives, the main factor without which the miracle couldn't take place is the person offering his gifts. If the man and the boy hadn't come forward to offer their food, the miracle would never take place. What they offered wasn't a great amount. They simply gave what they had. But the amount was never important to God. He can multiply our little to accomplish great things. He continues to respond to the cries of those marginalized, starved, and oppressed. But we are invited to participate in His miracles. Sometimes we doubt and question His plans. Sometimes His commands are crazy. But whether we like it or not, each one of us is a vehicle for His miracles. Some years ago, when Chennai was hit by floods, the poor people in the slums were severely affected as most of their possessions were washed away. The Jesuit philosophy community had to discern ways in which they could help out in those times. The first response was to provide financial aid, but on deeper introspection, they realized that they had to open up the campus and provide immediate shelter to the homeless. The entire hall and parts of the building were then opened to the homeless, thus saving the lives of many people. I found this quote by Dallas Jenkins, the director of the Chosen series, very apt in this context. Speaking about how this series started, he says that God sent him a message through someone who said, "It's not your job to feed the 5,000. It's only to provide the loaves and fish." If we can present our loaves and fish, no matter how small they might be, the Lord will provide abundantly, for nothing is impossible for Him. I pray that each one of us may be able to trust in the providence of God and, instead of hoarding, provide our loaves and fish to Jesus. May God bless us all.